the PowerPoint. So we're talking about the skeletal system. What is the skeletal system? Bones, cartilage, joints, ligaments, and other connective tissue. So we have the bones, cartilage, joints. The guided notes go from, I think, 4.1 to 4.4, but they cover all of these topics. Okay. Okay, we admit somebody else. Okay, so what does the skeletal system do? Support storage of calcium, phosphorus, and fat, blood cell production, protection of soft internal organs, and leverage for muscle action. Bone tissue is made up of specialized cells, which we'll mention, osteocytes. It's a strong, flexible matrix. So the specialized cells are osteocytes. There's a collagen fibers and there's calcium phosphate. And we'll see in a moment that bone serves as a storage depot for calcium. Your body is going to either build bone or break down bone based upon your weight, your age, uh, and also on the need for calcium. So, what type of bones are there? Long bones, short bones, flat bones, and irregular bones. Okay, so there'll be questions in WebAssign, and I'll repeat this over and over again on the parts of a long bone. But a flat bone is the parietal bone of the skull. A regular bone is the vertebral bone in your spinal column. The carpal bones of your wrist are short bones. Okay, admit. Okay, so humerus is a long bone. Okay, everybody there. Okay, everybody in. Okay, so know the different types of bones. So, what are the features of a long bone? The shaft, diaphysis, the ends, articular cartilage, periosteum, and endosteum. So, make sure you know these parts of the bone. The long middle shaft between the two ends is the diaphysis. The end of the bone closest to the midline is the proximal epiphysis. The far end of the bone away from the midline is the distal epiphysis. Each end has an articular cartilage, that spongy bone on the end of both. Okay, so again, articular cartilage is hyaline cartilage on the end, either end of the bone. There's a marrow cavity lined by endosteum. Compact bone makes up the diaphysis shaft. The medullary cavity is the uh, medullary cavity is the place where red blood cells are produced, and blood cells are produced, and the outer covering of the bone is the periosteum. So the outer fibrous layer is the periosteum. Osteocytes uh, make up the bone. They build bone, the osteoblasts build bone. So let's look at the fine structure of compact bone. Uh, we're going to look at an osteon, and we're going to look at central canal, and that contains arteries, veins, and nerves. So if we look at a typical uh, compact bone, the spongy bone will line the medullary cavity. The basic building block of bone is called an osteon. It contains a central canal with blood vessels and nerves, and it's layers and layers called lamellae that that uh, are built by osteoblast. Bone is living tissue. Notice that it's obviously full of blood. Anybody who's ever broken a bone knows there's a nerve there. Uh, so the medullary cavity again is lined by the spongy bone. Each of these little beams, trabeculae means uh, little beams. So when we look at the uh, structure of an osteon, surrounds a central canal, and where the blood vessels are and the nerves are located, and there's layers called lamellae, and the canaliculi are fine bones that are. Uh, Wait, let me take a quick break, and I'll be right back and take care of my dog. Sorry, I'm back. Okay, so again, if you look at a cross section of compact bone, you have a central canal, and the whole structure is layers of bone with osteocytes in little lacuna, and the canaliculi are fine channels through which the bone osteocytes, excuse me, sorry, communicate with uh, one another. So the osteocytes are living tissue, and they are uh, get their nutrients from the blood vessels, get rid of waste, and they communicate with and share that nutrients and move waste through the canaliculi. So spongy bone is different. It doesn't have osteons. Lamellae are the trabeculae, and blood forming spaces are there. We saw what spongy bone looked like in the picture above. So if we go back to that, there is our spongy bone lining the medullary cavity, and on either end of the bones in the epiphysis in a long bone. So what type of cells are in bone? Mature bone, uh, the osteocytes uh, end up in the layers of compact bone. Excuse me, let's go back and let somebody in. Okay. Okay, osteoclasts break down bone. Uh, Calcium levels in the body have to be maintained at a certain level in homeostasis. You need calcium for nerves to function, your heart to function, and for uh, muscles to function. Osteoblasts build bone. Okay, they provide the collagen fibers and the calcium salts that end up uh, ossifying your bone with the collagen and the hardening of the calcium salts. Uh, One type of bone formation is uh, ossification, when flat bones of the skull are built through a process called intramembranous ossification. Uh, Stem cells grow into osteoblasts, and they then produce spongy bone and then compact bone. So these cells are incredible. They can uh, migrate and work together to shape a bone and to build uh, spongy bone and then compact bone. So the other type of bone formation is called endochondral, because in the fetal skeleton is made of cartilage. So the flat bones of the skull, for instance, will be formed by intramembranous ossification. You just got to know that in general, these flat bones are formed by a process called intramembranous ossification. The endochondral ossification takes care of the rest of the fetal skeleton, which is built of cartilage and then is converted into uh, bone, hard bone. Okay, so what is this process of endochondral ossification? It starts in the center of the cartilage, and blood vessels will move in. You'll begin to build the osteoblast, building a marrow cavity. Blood vessels are growing into the primary ossification center. The cavity is enlarged. Uh, it's extensive blood flow and formation of spongy bone. And then you'll have secondary ossification centers. So you have the cavity formed with a uh, significant, sufficient blood supply. And that's just so you should know in general that building of long bones starts in the primary ossification center, uh, and you end up with uh, spongy bone in the proximal epiphysis and in the distal epiphysis, and lining the medullary cavity, and which is lined by the borders or the outer walls or compact bone. Okay, we'll skip through the next slides. That's just a step-by-step summary. So how do bones grow? Uh, Thickening of the bones is called appositional bone growth. Osteoblasts will thicken the walls of the medullary cavity, the outer walls, depending upon uh, your age and your maturity, and that's how bone growth is taken care of for the thickening of the bones. Okay, what do you need for bone growth? Minerals, vitamins, the hormones that influence bone growth are uh, growth hormone and the sex hormones. Okay, so we're right at 7:14. Let's stop there and go back to, let's stop this right here, stop the recording for one section. Okay.